The poor maid saved the Duke, but he never saw her. The storm came in fast, the way Bristol storms always did in November, no polite warning, no gradual darkening of the sky, just the sea deciding it had been patient long enough and acting accordingly. Clara had been at the cliffs for 40 minutes before it arrived, gathering driftwood by lamplight the way she had done every Thursday since she was 12, because the kitchen fires at Ashbourne Hall required wood and wood required collecting, and collecting required someone willing to do it at midnight, which in Clara's experience meant it required Clara. She had learned to work fast in the dark, to read the tide by sound rather than sight, to carry more than was reasonable in a single load so she would not have to come back. She was loading the last bundle when the lightning came. It turned the sea white for 1 second, flat, complete, total white, and in that second she saw the ship. Not a ship in difficulty. A ship already past difficulty, past the point at which human decisions could make any difference, in the process of being disassembled by the sea with the efficient indifference of water encountering something that was not water. It was a private vessel, small and fast and completely inadequate for what was currently being asked of it, and it was breaking apart on the rocks at the base of the cliff with a sound that the thunder nearly covered but not entirely. Clara dropped the wood. She did not think about it. She had learned, in 22 years of doing things that needed doing before anyone else got around to deciding to do them, that thinking during the moment was generally the thing that stopped the moment from going correctly. She went down the cliff path, not the safe path, the fast one, and she hit the beach at the base running, and the sea came up to her thighs and then her waist and then she was swimming, which was also something she had learned to do without particularly being taught, the way people learn things when the sea is close and childhood is long. There was a man in the water. He was large, she understood this immediately because large things are harder to move than small things, and she was calculating without knowing she was calculating, and he was unconscious and face down, which was the wrong orientation for a person in water, and the sea was trying to take him further out, which was also wrong. Clara got her arm under his shoulders and turned him over, and the sea pushed against both of them, and she pushed back and the beach was 20 feet away and then 15 and then 10. She got him onto the sand. She got the water out of him the way she had seen done once, years ago, when a boy from the village had gone under in the river, pressure on the chest, regular, firm, until the body remembered what it was supposed to be doing. It took longer than she would have liked. The lightning came again and she saw his face for the first time in the white light, sharp-featured, pale as the sea foam, with dark hair plastered flat and a jaw that even unconscious suggested someone who was accustomed to having opinions. Even in the state he was, it was obvious that he was beautiful. So beautiful. He gasped. The sound was like a door being opened in a sealed room, sudden, necessary, the specific sound of a person deciding to continue. His violet eyes opened. They were not focused. They were looking at the night sky, or looking at whatever a person looks at when they are not yet certain whether they are alive or somewhere else, and then they shifted and found her face, and she saw them try to organize the information they were receiving. She was, she knew, largely silhouette. The lamp had gone out in the rain. The moon was behind cloud. He would see a shape, a woman, kneeling, close, and smell the salt and the lavender from her apron pocket, where she kept sprigs of it because the kitchen smelled of fish and small comforts were available to anyone observant enough to find them. "You're safe," she said. "Don't move." He said nothing. He was looking at her with the unfocused look of a man whose body had recently decided to stop working and was reassessing. Then she heard the guards. They were coming from the direction of the estate, carrying lanterns that bounced in the wind, and she could hear their voices, 3 of them, maybe 4, and she understood in the immediate, practical way she understood things that needed understanding quickly. A scullery maid found alone on a beach with an unconscious nobleman at midnight would not be thanked. She would be questioned, accused, dismissed, or worse, depending on the ambitions and the character of whoever arrived first. She stood. She looked down at him for one moment. He was breathing. He was on solid ground. The guards were close enough to find him in under a minute. She reached up and unpinned the wooden hairpin holding her braid cheap wood, notched where she had carved her initials into it at 14 because she had owned nothing with her name on it and had decided to remedy this, and she set it on the rock beside him, for no reason she could have explained, and then she ran. "Hello, lovely." If you're enjoying this tale of hidden beauty and unexpected love, I'd be so grateful for a like or subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories where pain shatters and true character shines through. And if you'd like, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every note, and your presence makes these stories come alive. She made the cliff path in the dark from memory, and she was back in the kitchen with wet skirts and driftwood in her arms before the clock struck 1, and she stood at the kitchen fire for a long time after, breathing the smell of her own lavender and listening to the storm pass. She told no one. There was no one to tell. 2. Lady Honoria Vane found the hairpin. This was the piece of information that Clara would turn over in her mind for weeks afterward, examining it for the hinge point where things might have gone differently, and never quite finding one. Because Honoria had been walking the beach that morning for reasons that were her own, reasons that Clara would later understand had everything to do with the estate's financial state and the season's diminishing options. And she had found the Duke of Westmere propped against a rock with 2 of his guards in attendance and the hairpin on the stone beside him, and she had understood immediately what the hairpin meant and what the hairpin could be made to mean, which were 2 different things. She had picked it up. She had told the story of her rescue with the confidence of a woman who had constructed a version of events before anyone could question the original, and she had described the silhouette and the lavender and the salt air with enough detail to be convincing, because some details she had, after all, obtained firsthand. By the time Clara heard the story in the kitchen, from the under-butler, who had it from the senior footman, who had it from someone who had been in the room when Lord Arthur received his morning report, it had already been told 3 times and was therefore already more real than the truth. Clara said nothing. She was assigned to Honoria's household when the lady arrived at Ashbourne Hall for the season, because Honoria had requested a personal maid and the housekeeper had assigned Clara, who was efficient and quiet and could be relied upon to do her work without requiring supervision or conversation. Clara accepted this assignment with the same expression she wore for all assignments, attentive, neutral, giving nothing away. Have you ever wanted to visit somewhere that feels elegant, relaxing, and genuinely beautiful instead of loud and stressful? Quebec City is one of those places. Quiet morning cafes, historic streets, wonderful food, scenic river views, warm little restaurants in winter. The kind of destination that makes people slow down and actually enjoy life again. And honestly, it's especially wonderful for mature travelers who want comfort, charm, safety, and meaningful experiences instead of rushed vacations. That's why I created this Quebec City Travel Guide 2026 to 2027. It walks you through everything step by step so you can plan the kind of trip you'll remember for years. If that sounds like your kind of travel, the link to the book is waiting for you in the description below. She was lacing Honoria into her stays when Honoria described the rescue for the 4th time. The waves were absolutely mountainous, Honoria said, examining her own reflection with the focused interest of a woman conducting an audit. I barely had the strength to reach him, but something gave me, I can only describe it as superhuman courage. One simply acts, doesn't one, in a moment of crisis. Indeed, Clara said, pulling the lace through the eyelet with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 300 times and found the physical rhythm of it useful for keeping her face arranged correctly. He said my scent reminded him of the angel on the beach. Isn't that romantic? I told him I always wear lavender. Honoria touched her hair. He is coming to take tea this afternoon. Yes, my lady, Clara said. The lavender. She pulled the lace snug. Honoria made a small sound that suggested the stays were sufficiently tight and went back to her reflection. Lord Arthur arrived at 3. Clara served the tea. She was aware of him entering the room in the way that you are aware of weather, something changing in the quality of the air, the barometric pressure of a space shifting. She kept her eyes on the tea service, on the pour, on the angle of the cup. He was talking to Honoria about the recovery, about the estate, about the season. His voice was what she remembered from the beach without knowing she had memorized it, low, rich, and deep with the particular carrying quality of a man who was used to being heard in large rooms and had not entirely set this aside for smaller ones. Clara placed the cup in front of Honoria. She reached across to set the second cup. You smell distinctly of lavender, Lord Westmere, Honoria said, with the smile of a woman producing a planned line on schedule. "I find it has been with me since the beach," he said, pleasantly, and then his gaze moved the way gazes move when something in the peripheral registers before the conscious mind catches up, and landed on Clara. Clara looked back at her teapot. "Lavender is very fashionable," she said, to no one, and reached for the sugar. "Indeed," Honoria agreed. "I bathe in it daily. It is entirely my signature." In the act of lifting the sugar tongs, Clara's elbow caught the handle of the small pouring pitcher. A very modest quantity of tea, not scalding, barely warm, enough to be noticeable, transferred itself to Honoria's lap. Honoria produced a sound. Clara produced an expression of immediate, comprehensive apology that occupied her face so thoroughly that whatever had been on it before was entirely and permanently overwritten. "My deepest apologies, my lady," she said, producing a cloth from her pocket with the speed of a person who had learned to carry cloths. Arthur was watching her. Not the way people watched maids when maids made mistakes, the brief, uncomfortable attention that moves quickly to somewhere else. He was watching her with the expression of a man who has heard a piece of music he recognizes but cannot place. She focused on the cloth and Honoria's skirt and the business of managing the consequence, and she did not look up again. When she was done, she straightened, and found that Arthur was still looking at her, and she met his eyes for exactly as long as it took to hand the cloth to the next available footman and step back to the wall, and in that length of time she saw him feel the thing she had not given him enough information to name. She returned to her position at the wall. She arranged her face. "More tea, my lord," she said. 3 weeks passed. The wedding was set for December and Honoria was planning it with the focused energy of a woman who had been waiting for this particular opportunity for most of her adult life and was not going to allow any detail to be insufficiently considered. She had opinions about the cathedral flowers that she expressed at length. She had opinions about the gown that she expressed at greater length. She had opinions about the order of the processional that she expressed in writing, which Clara copied out twice because Honoria had changed her mind between the first and second version. Arthur was at the estate with increasing frequency, for reasons that were officially about the wedding arrangements and were, Clara observed, rarely spent in proximity to Honoria when Arthur could arrange otherwise. He kept finding reasons to speak to her. Not formally. Not in the way of a man who had decided something and was pursuing it, nothing that declared itself. Small things. Pausing when she was in a room. Asking questions that he could have asked anyone else. Looking at her in the way he had looked at her over the tea service, like a man trying to solve something that kept rearranging itself when he got close. Clara kept her expressions neutral and her answers brief and her lavender in her apron pocket. The banquet was a Thursday in November, 3 weeks before the wedding, and the main hall was full of the specific noise of 60 people eating and talking simultaneously, which produced a general roar that Clara moved through carrying a silver tray of roast pheasant that was significantly heavier than it looked, because silver trays always were. The footman, young, new, carrying more plates than was wise, came out of the serving door at the wrong angle and caught the edge of Clara's tray. The world made a decision without consulting her. She was falling, the tray was going, and then she was not falling because something had caught her, 2 hands, one at her waist and one at her arm, and the tray had tilted but not dropped, and the pheasant was still on it, and she was being held upright by Arthur, who had apparently been close enough to catch her and had done so without thinking because that was the kind of person he turned out to be when his body had to decide faster than his dignity could intervene. She was facing him. He was holding her. The hall, which had been 60 people talking, was approximately 3 people talking and 57 watching. The scent of lavender was very present. It was always more present when she was warm or alarmed, and she was currently both. His face, at this distance, was the face she had seen by lightning on a beach, the jaw, the eyes, the particular stillness of a man whose body has just told him something important and is waiting for his mind to catch up. 5 seconds. She counted them. "My beautiful lady, while I admire your enthusiasm for proximity," Arthur said, in the tone of a man deploying a known instrument to manage a situation that was managing him, "the gravy is making a dedicated effort on my waistcoat." Clara straightened. She steadied the tray. She met his eyes with the expression of a woman who has decided to match the instrument offered. "My deepest apologies, Your Grace," she said. "I shall endeavor to dump the soup on you next time. It would be a better color with the coat." He laughed. Not the polished social laugh that Clara had heard him produce at dinner, the one that was warm but measured, with one eye always on the room. This was a different laugh, sudden and genuine, the kind that a person does not entirely choose to produce, that comes out because something has gotten through the gate before the gate could close. It lasted 2 seconds. He recovered himself. He looked at her. She looked back at him. "Clara," said Honoria, from 3 seats away, in the tone of a woman who has been watching something she does not like and has run out of the patience to ignore it. Clara stepped back. She righted the tray. She returned to the serving line. She heard Honoria lean to her neighbor and say something in a low voice, and she did not hear what it was, and she did not need to. She carried the tray the rest of the way and handed it to the under-butler and stood with her back against the serving room wall for exactly as long as it took to return her face to neutral, which was slightly longer than usual. Through the door, she could hear the hall returning to its normal noise. 60 people talking. The roar resuming. She went back in. 4. The wedding suit arrived the night before the ceremony, pressed and wrapped in linen, and it was Clara who brought it to his study because the housekeeper had asked her to and because Clara had been doing the things that needed doing without being asked about it for so long that being asked made almost no difference. The study was lit by 2 candles when she entered. Arthur was standing at the window. He did not turn when she came in. He said, "Set it on the chair," without looking, and she set it on the chair, and she was turning to go when he said her name. "Not you or maid. Her name." She turned. He was still at the window. His back was to her, and she could see the particular tension of his shoulders that she had learned to read over these weeks, the way that people's bodies communicate the things they have decided not to say with their mouths. "Tell me something, Clara," he said, without turning. She waited. "Why is it that when I look at my future bride, I feel," he stopped. Started again. "I feel nothing," he said. "Nothing that," he turned. He looked at her with the direct, uncalculated look of a man who has decided to say something exactly as it is and is aware this is a departure. "But when I look at you, I feel as though something has woken up that I had decided was simply not operational." The candles did not do anything to help her. They lit the room with a warmth that was entirely unhelpful for the purpose of maintaining a correct expression. She looked at the wedding suit on the chair. She thought about the wooden hairpin, which she had not had in her hair since the night on the beach, and which she thought about in the specific way that you think about a thing you have given away without entirely intending to. "Because," she said, slowly, choosing with the care of a woman selecting footing on uncertain ground, "some stories are meant to be the kind that get told, Your Grace. And some stories are meant to be the kind that happen and are then." She stopped. "The lady saved your life. You have an obligation that matters. That is what is real." "Is it?" he said. It was not a question. "Yes," she said. "It is." She curtsied. She went to the door. "Clara." She stopped. She did not turn. "The hairpin," he said. "The wooden one. I found it on the beach beside me. It has a name carved into it." She said nothing. "The initials," he said, "are not Lady Honoria's." The candles moved slightly in a draft from the window. The study was very quiet except for them. "Good night, Your Grace," Clara said. She went out. She went to her room and she sat on the edge of her bed in the dark and she was entirely clear-eyed about all of it, which was the hardest kind of clarity to maintain, and she maintained it, because she had been doing difficult things without acknowledgement for as long as she could remember, and she was not going to stop now when it mattered most. In the study, Arthur sat at his desk. He placed the wooden hairpin on the surface in front of him. He looked at it for a long time. 5. The Cathedral of St. Michael's held 400 people without difficulty and was holding considerably more than that on the morning of the wedding, because weddings of this magnitude were public occasions and the public had opinions about attending them. Clara stood at the very back, behind the last pillar, which put her in shadow and gave her a clear line to the door she intended to exit through once it was done. She had been standing here for 20 minutes, which was 19 minutes longer than was sensible, and she was staying because she could not leave yet, which was the most honest accounting of it she was willing to give herself. Honoria came down the aisle in a gown that had cost what Clara earned in 3 years, wearing the expression of a woman arriving at a destination she had been navigating toward for a very long time. Arthur was at the altar. He was not wearing the expression of a man at his own wedding. He was wearing the expression Clara had last seen by candlelight in a study, the direct, uncalculated one, the one that appeared when the composure had made a decision to step aside. He was looking at the aisle, at Honoria approaching, and he was looking the way a man looks at a mathematical problem he has just understood is unsolvable by the method he has been applying. The vicar began. The words of the ceremony had the particular weight of words that have been said in this order for generations, and the cathedral gave them the acoustic space they required, and 400 people listened in the specific silence of a room full of people trying not to be the one who makes noise during something important. Then the wind came through the oceanside windows. Bristol in November admitted no apologies about the wind, and the cathedral's east windows, which had been opened for the air, admitted it fully. It moved through the nave in one long breath and it caught the bridal veil, heavy, long, fixed with 4 pins but not, as it turned out, 5, and it lifted it. Honoria reached for it. The altar flowers were arranged in tall vases along the steps, because Clara had been told the arrangements were 7, minimum, and there were indeed 7, filled with water and lavender, because it was fashionable, because Honoria had requested it, because she had told everyone for months that it was her signature scent, and Honoria's reaching arm caught the nearest vase. "Water, Arthur," he said. "My name is Arthur. You saved my life and you left a hairpin with your name on it, and you have been in the same house with me for 8 weeks, and I have spent every one of those weeks trying to understand why the only person who makes me feel entirely awake is a scullery maid I cannot stop looking at." He reached into his coat. He held out the wooden hairpin, her hairpin, the one with her initials, the one she had left on the rock beside him. "I believe this is yours." At the altar, Honoria said something in the tone of a woman who has not yet understood that the audience has already decided. "She is a scullery maid. She is nobody. She couldn't possibly." "Then this nobody," Arthur said, without turning, "saved my life for the 2nd time this morning." He took the hairpin and placed it carefully back into Clara's hair. His hands were steady. She was not breathing particularly well. "I owe you an explanation," he said, to her, quietly now, just for her. "And an apology. And a very long conversation about the fact that you have been serving tea to the woman who stole your story for 2 months and said nothing." "The tea," Clara said, because it was the first thing available, required serving. "Yes," he said. "That is very like you." He looked at her, and she looked at him, and the cathedral held its breath with 400 people doing the same, and the lavender water was still spreading slowly across the stone floor in a thin, fragrant wave, and the morning light came through the east windows bright and complete. He offered his hand. She looked at it. She looked at him. She took it. He walked with her down the aisle and through the cathedral doors and into the November morning, which was cold and bright in the way of Bristol mornings that have decided to stop pretending. And behind them the cathedral erupted in the particular sound of 400 people discovering simultaneously that they had come for a wedding and gotten something considerably better. They stood on the cathedral steps. The city was below them, the harbour beyond it, the sea beyond that, flat and silver in the morning light, looking entirely innocent. "I owe you a significant debt," Arthur said. "You owe me a hairpin," Clara said. "You've returned it. That is not how debts work. It is how this one works." She looked at the harbour. "The pheasant, at the banquet. I did not do that on purpose." "I know," he said. "The tea," she said. "That I did on purpose." He looked at her. Honoria was lying, Clara said simply. She deserved the tea. He laughed, the same sudden, genuine laugh from the banquet, the one that came out before the gate could close, the one she had been thinking about in her room in the dark afterward. "Yes," he said. "She did." He looked at their joined hands. "Clara. I don't know what comes next, and I understand that what comes next is complicated and probably inadvisable and entirely unprecedented in terms of what society will consider appropriate. Yes, she said. I intend to work it out anyway. With your permission. She looked at him. She looked at the sea. She thought about midnight cliffs and cold water and the specific sound a person makes when they decide to continue. She thought about 8 weeks of neutral expressions and careful distances and lavender in an apron pocket. She thought about a wooden hairpin with her initials in it, placed back into her hair by a man who had been carrying it for 3 months. You should know, she said, that I have opinions about most things and I express them. I have noticed, Arthur said. And that I am not going to be someone who says comfortable things when the honest ones are available. I am deeply grateful for this, he said. I have had enough comfortable things to last a lifetime. And that the next time you are drowning. I will endeavor not to be drowning again, Arthur said, as a general personal policy. But if you are, Clara said, I will still come in after you. He looked at her with the clear, direct look, the one from the beach, from the study, from the banquet floor, and this time she let herself look back at it properly, without arranging her face into something else, and what was in his face was simply what was there, uncomplicated by composure or social calculation, which was, she thought, the most honest thing she had seen in a very long time. I know, he said. Below them, Bristol went about its morning. The harbour was busy. The sea was silver. The lavender, spilled across cathedral stones behind them, scented the air that came through the open doors, and the sound from inside was still going, and would go on going, because 400 people had a great deal to say about what they had just seen, and they were saying all of it. Clara did not hear any of it. She was looking at the sea. Have you ever done something that mattered and received none of the credit?